In June, Reuters cited 4 sources who said the United Arab Emirates had agreed to unlock frozen Iranian funds, as much as $20 billion, with an initial $3 billion already delivered in exchange for Iran stopping its missile and drone attacks on Emirati territory. The UAE denied it vehemently, categorically, and repeatedly, in a formal statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs calling the reports entirely false and unfounded, and urging media outlets to rely on official sources only. Both things can be true at once. The denial can be sincere, and the underlying dynamic Reuters was describing can still be real. Because whether or not this specific transfer happened, the position the UAE found itself in is not in dispute. It absorbed hundreds of attacks during the war. It had spent months warning Washington against striking Iran in the first place, and when the fighting started anyway, it discovered that the protection it had spent 3 decades paying for did not actually protect it. That is the story of this episode. Not one transfer, but rather the position every Gulf state was put in and who benefits from keeping them there. For more than 3 decades, Gulf capitals built their entire strategic posture around one assumption. By hosting American bases and buying American weapons and staying close to Washington, in return, they would have American power stand between them and Iran. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the 5th Fleet in Bahrain, Ad Dhafra in UAE, hundreds of billions of dollars in defense purchases over decades, an implicit understanding that the Gulf importance to American strategy made the region a protected zone. The war tested that premise in the only way that actually matters. Saudi Arabia, the Emiratis, Qatar, and Kuwait had all told Washington for months that striking Iran was a mistake. Omani foreign minister announced diplomatic progress on the nuclear file less than 24 hours before the strikes happened anyway. When American interests and Gulf interests diverged, American interests won every time. Then the Gulf states absorbed the consequences. Thousands of attacks hit facilities hosting US forces and critical infrastructure across GCC territory. The UAE, having taken the most direct hits of any Gulf state, adopted the most defiant public posture towards Iran, while, according to Reuters sources, simultaneously negotiating a private arrangement to make the attacks stop. Whether or not the specific dollar figure is accurate, the logic behind it is not complicated. If Washington will not or cannot stop the missiles, and Tehran controls whether the missiles keep flying, a wealthy state under sustained bombardment has exactly one lever left to pull. Here is the part that does not get said out loud by anyone involved. America has spent years signaling it wants out of West Asia as the center of its strategic attention, pull back from Afghanistan, wind down long deployments, focus resources on the Pacific and on the Western Hemisphere. But a full American exit from the Gulf was never actually on the table, because the region without a persistent threat does not need American protection, and a region that does not need American protection does not keep buying American weapons and hosting American bases or channeling its sovereign wealth towards American markets. Iran, for its part, does not need the Strait of Hormuz to be calm. It needs the Strait of Hormuz to remain something only Iran can threaten to close. That leverage is worth more to Tehran quiet than it is worth used. The moment Hormuz becomes permanently secure, Iran loses the single card that forces the rest of the world to negotiate with it directly. So neither side actually wants full peace. America wants a Gulf that still needs protecting. Iran wants a strait that still needs restraining. Both outcomes require the same thing, a region kept just unstable enough that everyone in it keeps paying somebody to make the instability stop. The Gulf states are not bystanders to this. They are the funding source, whether it is billions in frozen assets released to Tehran to stop missiles, or hundreds of billions in defense contracts paid to Washington to prevent the missiles in the first place. The money moves out of Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Doha, and Kuwait City in both directions simultaneously. Good cop, bad cop, and the Gulf treasuries pay both of them. Then there is Israel, whose calculation is the simplest of the three. Every week, the region stays consumed with an Iran crisis, a Hormuz crisis, a Gulf security crisis, a Bab el-Mandeb crisis. Is a week where almost nobody outside the region is watching what Israel is actually doing on the ground. In the West Bank, in southern Lebanon, in Gaza, in southern Syria, in the Iraqi desert, chaos everywhere is a cover here. The less attention the region's stability gets, the more room Israel has to keep expanding while everyone else is looking at the wrong fire. None of this requires a secret meeting or a signed conspiracy. It requires only that each actor pursue what already serves it, and that the thing that serves all three happens to be the same condition: controlled, continuous, never quiet, resolved instability. Peace, in the full sense of the word, is not a shared goal here. It is closer to a shared threat. A genuinely stable Gulf needs no protection racket from Washington and no threat premium from Tehran. It gives Israel far less cover than a region on fire does. Everyone involved has strong reasons to manage the crisis. Almost nobody involved has a strong reason to end it. The Gulf states are left paying for both sides of an arrangement they did not design and cannot opt out of. Protection money to Washington when the threat is live. Ransom or something that looks enough like it to spook a government into a categorical public denial to Tehran when the missiles start flying anyway. The question this episode leaves you with is a simple one. If a ceasefire holds, watch what happens to the arms deals, to the base agreements, to the sovereign wealth flows. If the underlying architecture does not change, if the money keeps moving in the same two directions regardless of who is technically at war with whom, that will tell you what the war was actually for. The world is complex. The noise is deliberate. The spectrum cuts through it.